feel there's a strong need to
Here's the situation we face. Over the long term, the real budget problem is that of growing government spending. Spending cuts are going to have to be part of the solution, and a big part, but there's no way we can close the budget gap that we face without also raising taxes.
The political system is clearly broken in fixing this problem, but our political system is really a reflection of our own personal preferences as a society. We believe that we are entitled to everlasting prosperity with increasingly large government benefits from the cradle to the grave, but we equally feel like we don't have a responsibility to pay for it. We're socialists when it comes to spending and libertarians when it comes to taxes.
We're going to have to decide which of the Bush tax cuts should be extended in whole or in part, and which ones should be allowed to expire or otherwise scale back.
If the 2001 and 2003 Bush tax cuts are extended, the revenues of the federal government would decrease significantly.
The cost of Bush tax cuts is about $2 trillion over 10 years. And to put that in perspective, that's double the cost of expanded health care coverage that everyone's complaining that we can't afford.
Matter of fact, not only do I think we ought not to raise them, I think we ought to make every tax cut we pass permanent.
One of the things that I've noticed in the past several years is that you can't even discuss revenue increases or tax increases. Taxes can only go one way, they can go down.
Recent estimates by the Congressional Budget Office conclude that by letting the Bush tax cuts expire, federal tax revenues would go up by an average of 1% of GDP per year, or about $2.6 trillion over the next 10 years. But that's not enough to solve our problem. Finding other revenue sources may be unavoidable.
We're going to have to look at consumption taxes like a value-added tax or some form of national sales tax as a mechanism for maintaining some of the benefits that we have promised through our entitlement programs.
All the industrial countries have a national sales tax of some sort.
Consumption taxes would do more than just raise revenues. They would make consumer spending more expensive and could help encourage people to save more of their incomes. That, in turn, would increase domestic savings and reduce our reliance on foreign lenders. Another way to close our long-term gap is to modernize the tax system.
I think the current tax system is just deeply flawed. It's been amended repeatedly over many years, and it's really become a monstrosity.
The United States tax code is made up of almost 10,000 different sections. Much of this system is confusing, outdated, and filled with loopholes. There are many tax preferences that result in almost $1 trillion in lost revenue every year. The special tax treatment of employer-paid health care and home mortgage interest payments are the two largest examples. Furthermore, our complex and burdensome corporate tax system puts American companies at a competitive disadvantage internationally.
I think our tax system has gone very much awry in the last 10 years.
Streamlining and eliminating many of those tax loopholes could bring in a lot more revenue for the government.
I think it's going to require us to write a new tax system, one that's more fair.
The world has changed many times on taxes over the years. If you read the history of the tax code, there have been a lot of swings in both public opinion and activities in Congress. The one thing I can promise you is it'll be different 20 years from now.
There's a lot of ideas. We could spend the next 6 hours debating taxes. The last topic, taxes, once everybody got involved in the voting, they realized that it's a really big issue and they wanted to be part of it.
Some combination of revenue changes will be required to help lower the potential future debt levels. If we wait until 2030 to balance the budget, we will have to cut spending by 48% or raise taxes by 64%. Which is equivalent to more than doubling individual income taxes. These percentages rise with the passage of time. Therefore, we need to start now to determine how to put our nation's finances in order.
The problems that we're facing are not going to be solved without making some very fundamental choices, and you can't take things off the table. Bottom line is, whatever government chooses to spend, eventually it's going to have to tax to pay for. I mean, that's the way government pays for things. There's no magic.
Our four main areas, defense and other spending, Social Security, healthcare, and taxes, are the cornerstones for our major financial reform in America. The sum total of all these illustrative reforms are but one way to get us to the 60% of GDP target. Many other combinations of solutions are possible, but what is critical is that we get started.
You have to make tough choices on spending constraints, on social insurance reforms, on health care costs, on tax reforms. Tough choices are inevitable.
Did you see any of those choices made while you were here?
No, that's why we need a special process. They won't be made, in my opinion, Senator. They won't be made in the regular order because the regular order is dysfunctional.
There is no serious person that has looked at our projected growth in debt and not concluded we're on an unsustainable course.
There's some very tough decisions that have to be made, but in some respects, they are tough politically, not necessarily economically.
Sadly, perhaps tragically, the long term is now right next door. It's right around the corner.
Right now, there is a strong sense by a large number that fiscal constraint is essential to be applied now. The longer we wait, the more difficult it will be.
You know, the American people have shown if they're told the truth about a problem, they'll face up to it and they'll support action. And that's really what's required now.
Our challenge is to act sooner rather than later.
Determining which areas will experience the greatest level of reform is what we as a nation need to decide.
Seeing where our generation stands on these issues, we have people from all over the spectrum. There's a lot of agreement going on here. All of us seeing that we do agree on these things is encouraging.
Because as long as this stuff still happens, you can cut this apartment in half, and we'd still want to have dinner together. We'll figure it out.
I would definitely say that this is a group of fighters. Even though a lot of us may feel overwhelmed by it, I don't think we're going to be conquered by it. I think we are the generation that feels that we can do this.